Oh,
that's when they're up, kick them when they're down.
Yeah. So listen, we hear that every week, and it just gets us ready to do the show. And sometimes we even start with our closing number, which is exciting, which is a bell ring right off the top for Jason, our board operator.
And that's why they call us Down and Dirty.
Down and Dirty. If you're listening and you're joining us just now on WMNF 88.5 here in Tampa, I'm Mario Nunez. I'm seated alongside my broadcast partner,
John Dingfelder.
There he is, and we already introduced Jason Marlowe.
Hello.
He's behind the board. He's the guy that's making it all happen.
The man behind the curtain.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. Toto, leave that curtain alone. So, if you'd like to join the conversation today, and boy, we've got a special guest in studio. We're going to keep that close to the vest until we do the great reveal here in just a couple of minutes. But if you've been, with your antenna as high as it can reach and your social media presence you probably ferreted the answers out because we haven't been too secretive about it. We want you to be able to communicate with us today and join in the conversation. But as we do here on the show each week, we start off with something we call three things.
Three things.
But now today, because we have a special guest and we don't want to take too much time, we're calling it two things. All right, two things. We're going to go around the horn. We start with age before beauty. Big John, what has gotten stuck in your craw this week?
Oh, that is painful. And by the way, if and when you do want to call us, it's 813-239-9663, or you can email us. Mario reads these emails at dj@wmnf.org, or you can text us at 813-433-0885. All right, pet peeve number one. Very serious stuff. We've been fighting this battle. It's gone up and down. Tampa Bay is losing its seagrasses, which is extremely important to all the little fishies and critters and overall health of the Bay Area.
Of the estuary.
We've had 16% overall loss across the entire Bay over the last year or two. And north of the causeway, 50% of the seagrasses north of the Courtney Campbell Causeway have been lost this past year. They're trying to study it. They're doing all sorts of studies. Mostly it's about nitrogen and nutrients, but they're trying to actually fingerprint and see what the exact sources of that is, and they're really working hard on it. So that's my pet peeve.
Seagrass is also important to prevent erosion during the storm season.
Yep.
And that nitrogen you're talking about, what's that coming from? Fertilizer.
Fertilizer.
Stop fertilizing your yard. Do what we do here at WMNF. Just have a xeriscape outside your house, right? You don't got to mow it. You don't got to worry about watering it. Plant the succulents, plant the stuff that grows in arid, dry conditions. We're going to get enough rain anyway.
Yeah, my weeds in my yard really don't need any nitrogen.
There you go. And weeds are good. So here the mantra is, if it's brown, pull it. If it's green, mow it. Moving on.
Jason, what do you got?
So, I'm going to start off with yesterday's council meeting. I was actually one of the people who was speaking about
Tampa City Council?
Oh, yes,
there
indeed.
are other councils.
Yeah, but the Tampa's special and close to my heart.
It is.
And I'll say I was one of a number of people who were speaking about the overusage of TPD's helicopters, specifically in our neighborhoods. And I'll say council didn't quite rise to the challenge. We had a couple members of council who were willing to talk about the issue on behalf of neighbors, but I think it's important that we try to find ways to make sure that everybody gets to feel like they're not living in a police state. You don't need a helicopter hovering over you.
Are they circling your backyard to see what's growing?
It's possible.
Okay.
Very, very telling. I'm just going to say. So my turn.
I have heard them in our neighborhood, Jason.
Mm-hmm. Every neighborhood.
So I've got one that's a bad news, good news story. It's a pet peeve, but it turned into a wonderful, it's the swan, the goose, it's swan story. Okay, so recently went to a restaurant, which I will name at this point, because why not? It's a good story. Jazzy's over there on Waters, right? Waters just next to the Veterans Expressway.
Just don't give them a plug.
No.
No plug.
No, here we go. Right. So I've been eating there for many, many times, many, many years. Former Buccaneer owns the facility. So, and I had a hankering for some barbecue. Pulled in there, ordered my lunch. My wife and I ate. Less than an exciting experience. It was really kind of disappointing. At that point, I said, you know what, man, I'm just not coming back here no more. This is too much. But then I thought, no, if I was the owner of this place, I'd want to know what was the disappointment. So I sent an email on social media. And do you know, this morning, 9 o'clock, I received a phone call from the owner saying, hey, what gives? We want to make this right. I said, do you? And are you, who we think you are, former defensive back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which he was, okay? And then we got off on a conversation, fabulous conversation about an incident.
So
I
did
said,
you have barbecue for breakfast?
I didn't.
Oh, okay.
But I'm going to have it for lunch soon, and we're going to meet up there. And so the moral of the story is, listen, if you have a bad experience, don't just throw the baby out with the bathwater. Follow up. Give ownership, give management an opportunity to get it right.
Constructive
because
criticism.
responsible ownership will always want to fix it. And then who knows, man, you may make a new friend for life. So Jazzy's, good on you. Started out bad, ended up fabulous. Johnny, what you got?
There we go. Okay, I'm going to get on the other side of the bed because we are a regional radio network.
Yes, we are.
Over in St. Petersburg, the fire chief is taking a lot of heat. As a matter of fact, the city commission chair over there has asked for his resignation, or if not, his termination. There seems to be possibly some racial issues involved in that. Fire departments across the country are known to be sort of the last one getting on board in terms of diversity and equity and all. So I don't have a specific opinion on that, but it is interesting to note. And I'm going to squeeze in a third one, even though I told you guys I was going to do two.
You got it.
So anyway, the third issue is the Tampa mayor has asked for a 16%. Mayor Jane Castor has asked for a 16% hike in property taxes. I'm sure our guest might have something to say about that. That was a good sound
What is the
effect.
mayor thinking? Well timed.
Well, and council looks like she's got the votes over there. So
Ouchie.
So it's not happening overnight.
What
It'll
is that-
happen
what
in
is
the
that-
next couple of weeks. And so if you have an opinion,
Now's your time to voice
call or write to the mayor.
Show up.
Or city council. City council has the final word on that.
And you can do always public comment, correct? You can always show
Public
up.
comment during budget.
There you go.
When's budget, Jason?
I believe it's approved end of this month. I know they had their first, obviously, hearing with the mayor's presentation yesterday. I mean, it's funny you mentioned that because my next beef
You're on,
is the
Jace.
budget.
You're on, Jace.
And I'll
Hit it.
say, I'm in support of the millage increase. I'll be honest. I do think this is basically an all for transportation for ourselves. The county won't let us do it because the county has now been denied it twice. But
DOT
we have
doesn't
major
care?
transit issues
But it goes,
that have to be
but it goes
solved
into the
somewhere.
general fund, and a lot of that goes to TPD salaries.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think you have an argument
Down
to
and
make
dirty.
about where we're allocating these funds, but I'll say in the end, if we're not finding ways to solve our transit issues, we're going to have even more compounded transit issues. So we have to start finding ways to no longer kick the can down the road. And this is a start of it. So I applaud her for being willing to look tough at things. I'll say anecdotally, just to close up, I don't know if 16% of a millage increase to parks is the appropriate amount of allocation we need to be doing when we have lots of other issues. I love parks. I love green spaces as much as anybody, but we're also
So
broke.
Mayor Buckhorn tried a even bigger tax increase, and that city council cut it in half. And they had the cojones to do it. This council can do anything they want to do when it comes to the budget, so let's see what kind of cojones they have.
I think she has the votes, but I think that's because the needs are so dire that it's going to be very hard for people to say no to things that we do obviously need. It's hard to tell people, like, let your street flood.
And I think what we should do here as a collective, the three of us, is make sure we get somebody on that council to come in and maybe talk to us about that in the coming weeks
That's a good
or
idea.
week,
That's a good
as
idea.
in next week.
Oh,
So
you're
my
the
last,
last one,
yeah,
then.
my last one going away is, and I was going to give Ron DeSantis another shout out because I say each and every week on this show that he's in my crosshairs. But since I've only got 2 this week instead of 3, my pet peeve this week has got to be, I can't keep up with all the indictments. I can't keep up, let me say it again, with all the indictments.
Who's
It's
getting indicted?
Very frustrating.
Who's getting indicted?
It's somebody with
Many
some
people
really
are
bad
saying.
hair. But you know, and it's an issue. I'm not making light of it because it is. We are living, you all know this, we're living history right now. This is the kind of stuff, you know, we studied Dred Scott when we were in the 7th grade, Brown versus the Board of Education. They're going to be studying this for the next 100 years, provided we survive it. But
You know, Mario, we do have him in the studio to rebut.
is he present?
Yeah, I think he's present.
Is he here? He can't
Your
possibly.
imitation.
He
You did
can't-
it before.
Let me tell you something. Many people are saying that this is a witch hunt. I don't know where they found these witches. I just got to tell you, it's not my best.
All
It's
right,
not his
that's
best,
pretty-
but he gave
I
it a
do a better
shot.
Charlie.
But he gave it a shot. So
Maybe we'll get Guido in here
My-
to
my-
do it
I do
better.
a better Charlie.
my point is, we all need to be paying attention because this is living history. We're in the moment, and it can go either way, y'all. The polls are giving us giving me dread, giving me agita. But I believe in humanity. I believe that at the end of the day, I hate that phrase, but I'm going to use it right now. It's apt that we will come out on the other side of this better, stronger, and perhaps even more dedicated to preserving our democracy. Can we leave it there?
I told my 8-year-old grandson, we were talking about this, and I was telling him.
How do you explain it to the kids?
Well, the very first indictment, we were going through it page by page. And he saw the pictures of the files on the floor in the bathroom and that sort of thing. But I told him, he said, that guy needs to go to jail or something. And I said, nope. I said, in our society, innocent until proven guilty by a jury of his peers. And, that's what we believe in. So now he's indicted. I'm not going to convict him until there's a trial.
If you're taking an 8-year-old through an indictment, I'm calling Department of Child Family Services immediately.
And with that,
that's abuse. That's
ladies
abuse.
and gentlemen, we will close this segment that we call Two Things Today. Let me go ahead and shift gears now a little bit and introduce a dear friend of mine, somebody who's very, very well known in Ybor City. If you've ever been to King Corona in the last 30 years, you've probably seen him tooling around. We have a personal history. He's like a big brother to me, and I want to introduce him to you guys. Now I'm going to let him introduce himself as well. His name is Joe Howden, but there's also another alias that my dear friend goes by. Joey, good morning.
Well, good morning, Mario. Yes, well, the guy was so nice that they named him twice.
That's right. That's right. Are we picking up his microphone good? Can we hear him good?
Can you hear me?
All right.
Yes.
Here we go.
I can speak louder.
DJ Spaceship is wanting to get your attention, Jace. There we go.
Yeah, I may need to tilt that microphone up, pull it up like mine, and then come across, so it's more horizontal. Here, I'll get it.
No, stay there. Stay right there. Stay right there. There you go. Use that mic for a moment, Joe, if you don't mind.
Okay, now can we hear? Very good.
Welcome to the conference. Can we get that one? Can we get that one set up? Welcome to the conference, Joe. So
yes.
Please,
good morning, Mario.
Good morning, my friend.
Yes.
Who the heck
Joe
are
Howden,
you?
and known by my other friends as Joe King Carter, and as I said earlier, the man so nice they named him twice. So
There it
it
is.
is.
So, Joe, you're here today because of the guest that's seated to your right. You are a Bradenton native. However, you came to Ybor City just as quickly as you could. You made it your home. You live on 6th Avenue, which is right a block away from all of life as we know it on 7th.
What year did you get here, Joe?
Would you? Well, I started getting involved in Ybor City in the mid to late 80s. I can give you a 2.5-minute rundown of the last 40 years of my life if you'd like, but
Go.
I was an
Maybe
artist.
the 1-minute version.
I was an emerging artist living in Hyde Park. Got involved in the Artists Alliance Gallery, which was next to Selena's, if anybody remembers that.
Yep.
We're going way back in time. And Marty Hirons was one of the people behind that. In those days, the cultural centers of Tampa were USF, Ybor City, and South Tampa. There were some galleries in South Tampa, and there were people like Joan Genowine and others who were working on the art. So before there were the Gobioffs and the Daryl Shaws and the Vinnicks and others, there were people who were supporting the arts. That Artists Alliance moved to Ybor City and became, they changed their nonprofit status and became the Florida Center for Contemporary Art on 8th Avenue, originally on 7th and on 8th. And I was working at the Tampa Museum in the preparations exhibitions department. I started volunteering for the Florida Center, and for 3 years I was the exhibitions chair there. Then I met Sarah Romeo. Remember Sarah Romeo? Became state representative.
Yes.
Sarah and her husband Walter, friends of mine, opened a shop on 7th Avenue, and they asked me to manage it for them. And it's in that moment in time that I really started to fall in love with Ybor City. And I realized that I didn't want to go back to Hyde Park to sleep at night. I wanted to sleep in Ybor City. So I bought a house, and it changed my life in miraculous ways. I immediately realized that my neighbors were all marginalized individuals, mostly African-American elders, Cuban elders, Italian elders. They didn't know how to interact with the system, and Ybor City was changing. So I founded the First Neighborhood Association. When I say I founded it, I wasn't alone in that effort. There were many who helped do that. But I went down and signed the charter, so I get to be the founder. But that sort of ejected me into local politics and community organizing. I started serving on the YCDC board. I've served on just about every board in Ybor City. I served on the Barrio Latino Commission, our preservation board, which I'm very proud to say I've chaired that committee 2 different occasions. And I sort of became this person in Ybor City. I'm also becoming an accidental historian while all that's happening. And I helped my dear, beautiful friend Don Barco and his beautiful wife, Brenda Barco, create King Corona Cigars on 7th Avenue. Once it seemed like the neighborhood could stand on its own without me and other places, I took a job outside of Ybor City as the art director for a major nonprofit here in Tampa that supports individuals with disabilities, intellectual and physical disabilities. I did that for about a dozen years. In 2020, I decided to make a lifestyle change. And so I quit my job and sort of went back home to Ybor City. I conduct history tours there. I work for the Chamber of Commerce as a tourism counselor. And that's kind of where we are now.
And let me say, for the record, you conduct quite a mean history tour, if I may say
you.
that. Yes,
Thank you.
yes,
Thank
I've
you.
attended that one, and your ghost
History
tours
should not be painful.
And your ghost tours are pretty awesome too.
Thank you. I try to make that medicine go down with some really good sugar.
No,
but
performing art is your thing, baby.
yeah,
I'm just going to say it.
Yeah, thank you. In another life, who knows? But at any rate, now let's go back to the late 80s and very early 90s. Sarah Romeo and I and Jill Wax and Brad Cooper formed an organization. The acronym was YEAA, Y-E-A-A, which stood for Ybor Entertainment and Arts Association. And this was a way to try to bridge the gap between entertainment and retail and arts because Ybor City was transitioning. What David Audette and Amy Espinoza call the lost colony of Ybor City, which is the great art community that was there in the 80s, was beginning to shift. And the city was making their decisions to try to turn Ybor City into an entertainment zone. And we sensed all that, so we started to meet. And in those meetings, one of the people involved in that was a young man, a little bit younger than me, who lived in above the old King Greco hardware store on the northeast corner of 15th and 8th. He was a student at USF. We met. I saw that we shared values. I saw that he was very supportive of historic preservation. And, you know, in my world, it's like in anybody else's world. If you love what I love, you're part of my tribe. So we became friends. And he made that commitment by buying a building on 7th Avenue at the northwest corner of 17th and 7th. And one day that building collapsed or became structurally weak. Part of the bricks fell out in the street. The building had to be erased. And that man who owned it was Daryl Shaw. And,
Wait a minute. Did you say Daryl Shaw?
Yes, Daryl Shaw is the name of that individual. And so they built a structure on that property. He and his family. I was on the barrio. I helped approve that. And Daryl was around a little bit, and then he sort of went away. And I thought, well, this makes sense because he got burned. I'll probably never see that guy again. Now, keep in mind, in my 35 years in Ybor City, I have seen many people who are very enthusiastic come and go. It's a hard challenge there. And so, or it was then at least. And so I thought, well, I'll never see Daryl again, and that's unfortunate. And then a few years ago, I started reading about Daryl in the newspaper, and I thought, well, this is interesting, and kind of caught up on his life. And then within the last couple of years, we reunited at Daryl attended as a guest speaker at a neighborhood association meeting, and I was thrilled to talk with him. And since then, we've been talking, and I consider him a friend, and I support what he's doing in Ybor City.
So you said you've been talking to him, correct?
Yes.
Isn't this a wonderful segue? Shall we talk to him
We
now?
should talk to him now, I
Ladies
think.
and gentlemen, if you haven't figured it out, our very special guest today is Mr. Daryl Shaw, the man for whom Joe was introducing to you, if not intentionally. He was telling you a little bit about his background. Daryl, on behalf of the crew from Down and Dirty, thank you for taking your time to be here today. We know you don't do this too often.
Thank you, Mario.
Thanks for being here. So you can now tell us a little bit about what you feel about that fella sitting to your left. Of course, we know your history. We know where you've been with all of the wonderful things that you did with your Blue Pearl Enterprise, with your brother, and now you've taken it upon yourself to become what I like to consider Mr. Vicente Martinez Ybor 2.0. Because, he started his enterprise in his late 60s, which is astonishing to think about. You've known Joe for a minute. What are your impressions of that fella?
Well, we had a deal. If I was going to come onto this show, Joe was going to give me one of his King Howden mangoes.
What?
Oh, yes.
Listen, I've got
those
an
are
email.
special.
I've got an email here. How did you know? Did you send this email?
No.
Because the emailer says, "Hey, ask Joe about his fruit tree." Well, now let's go ahead and talk
Go,
about
Joe,
that.
go ahead. Go ahead.
No. Let's not spend time on I have a mango tree that is a mutation, which means I got to name it. I'm not a botanist, but through the International Rare Fruit Tree Council, I actually got to legally name my mango, which is called the Royal Howden de Ybor mango. And so there it is.
And where are they? I see no mangoes on the table.
There, I'm sorry.
That's such a well-timed
I'm sorry.
comment. So you must get together with Daryl and bring
Yes.
him
Oh,
a
he's going
mango.
to get a mango, believe me.
So Joe, you guys have now reacquainted yourselves.
Yes.
You're attached somewhat at the hip because.
Well, no, I wouldn't say that. But
Well, okay, but I'll go so
we're
far.
not meeting daily. But
No, but I'll go so far as to say that your interests and Daryl's interests
Oh, absolutely.
definitely intersect, right?
Yes.
So and Daryl, what people might not appreciate about him or know is that he is a big fan of all things art. And obviously he's been in Ybor since that long.
art and historic preservation, and he gets
Big
that.
time.
And we're going to have to let Daryl talk some. But
Yes.
my friends who know about that I might know him have said, well, wait a minute, you've been fighting with developers for 30 years in Ybor City, which is often typically the case. And why are you so friendly with this guy? Well, it's not because we're old friends. I'm more than willing to call my friends out. It's because Daryl is doing what I think should be done in Ybor City, which is developing with a vision of what Ybor City can be. And I said to Daryl one time that if I hit $1 billion lotto tomorrow,
Come on.
I'd be doing just what Daryl is doing. So what people have to appreciate is there's a huge difference between good development and bad development. And if you are in a helicopter over the interchange at I-4 and 275 and you see Ybor City, when you're on the street, it feels compressed. But when you're looking at it at a distance, it's mostly empty. And there is a lot of empty land left over, mostly from urban renewal. And that land is going to get developed eventually. It's going to either get developed well or it's going to get developed poorly. And my attitude is, let's make sure it's developed well. And I know what Daryl's vision is for that, which is almost mostly mixed use and a lot of residential. And that's what Ybor City needs.
All right, guys.
If you're joining the
Why don't-
conversation right now, be sure to call us at 813-239-9663. You can email us at dj@wmnf.org or text us, because a lot of people like to do that, just too busy to do anything else. 813-433-0885. I want to hear from Mr. Shaw now.
Yeah,
because,
let's hear your vision, Daryl.
Yeah, there you go. That's I think why you might be here today, Mr. Shaw. So everybody's leaning into their radios now. They want to know what's around the next corner.
It's a good question. So the vision starts at a very high level, and that is to see Ybor revitalize, to become once again one of America's great neighborhoods. And I've spent my time thinking through what are the ingredients to a great neighborhood, and then how do we effectuate those changes to get us there. And that really is the focus. And you think back to the way that Ybor was, where you get people from multiple countries, multiple cultures, working together, living together, working in the neighborhood, living in the neighborhood, getting their social services in the neighborhood, getting their entertainment in the neighborhood. And that's a community. That's a sense of community. And how do we bring that back? So that at a high level is the focus. To get there, as Joe mentioned well, there's a lot of vacant land in Ybor. Urban renewal took a lot of people out of the district. And so how do we bring people back to the district? We need people living there. Once you have people living there, what do they want? Ybor's urban. It's wonderful. It's got a great grid structure. It's gritty. It needs some green space. It needs some public parks. It needs some bikes and pedestrian paths to connect to other areas of the urban core so that you have these multiple interconnected neighborhoods. Ybor has become known as an entertainment district. That's a strategic advantage. It's also a disadvantage in that it's become too heavily weighted toward the late night. And we don't see those daytime activities. We don't have the venues or the destinations that will bring people in during the day to come, to go to an art exhibit, to go to a museum, to go to an experience, and then go get something to eat or something to drink, and then stay there in the evening or stay there late. It's just a little bit imbalanced. And so how do we think through the mix that is there? A number of establishments are only open Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. Most of the time, they're closed. So when somebody comes to the district and they walk down the street, they say, this place is so cool, but what is there to do? Because the establishments are closed. So how do we think through that? Once that takes place, and I think the next step in that evolution is restaurants. Restaurants, there are some wonderful restaurants in Ybor. You go to Columbia, you go to Barter House, you go to Acropolis. There's some wonderful places. But Ybor could use more. And we need more really good local restaurateurs to come into the district. We are talking with several now. They are literally on the fence. They're saying, I want to be in Ybor. I know I need to be in Ybor, but it's now the right time. And as soon as we can get a few of those dominoes to fall, others will come. People will move to the district. People will come and visit. Once you get that increased foot traffic, retail will follow. So that's the vision, and we're just trying to pull as many levers as we can as quickly as possible.
I know there's so many people that are hanging on every word because Ybor, to a certain group of Tampeños, right, original Tampa natives that have been here when Mr. Ybor came in, know what a thriving community Ybor City once was. And I think a lot of us nostalgically long for that to maybe once again be. John, did you have something you'd like to add?
So let's focus in on what your large project is. Okay, it's and I'll try and lay it out a little bit, and you help me as you go. So over there next to Nucio Parkway, which is sort of halfway between the core of Ybor and downtown, there was how many acres?
30 to 40 acres of mixed use. 30
to 40 acres that you acquired. It used to be the Tampa Park Apartments mostly, and I think that's where your big project is. What I read, I think was 4,500 units ultimately, living units, dwelling units, and also a mixed use area, I guess, of commercial and other types of uses through there, which is all good. I think it's all good. My question is, I have a couple of questions about it, but my question is what makes that different from Armature or Water, what do they call it? Water Street, or Channelside, or what have you, number one. Number two is the area we're really talking about, Ybor per se. You're going to plop 4,500 mostly middle class and upper middle class people in that transitional area between Ybor and downtown. It's not the core of Ybor per se, and not, right, neither here nor there, but it's not, in my opinion. I used to teach over there. I used to teach at Booker T. Washington for 2 years. And so I'm very familiar with with the area. I'm very familiar with Tampa Park Apartments, Central Park Village, which used to be there across the street, is now Encore. So that's another sort of mixed-use residential area that seems to me kind of similar to what you're doing. So why is what you're doing different, and why will it change Ybor, and will it change Ybor back to where it was with a lot of middle and lower income people, or will it just change it into Armature?
So good questions. The development you're referencing is Gasworks, which we've started on. I view Gasworks not as a development destination. I think you referenced Water Street, Midtown, in and of itself. It is but one component of the revitalization of Ybor. I don't think we separate it out as a destination in and of itself. It's how does Gasworks help facilitate the growth of Ybor in totality? Ybor, and Joe referenced it again, if you're looking at Ybor's 700 to 750 acres. Right now, people's perception of the district is a 10-block stretch of 7th Avenue. Ybor is so much more than that. And so there will be over time, if you take the areas bounded by the highway, and Ybor actually extends north of the highway, but if you took those areas bounded by the I-4 on the north, the Selman connector on the east, Selman on the south, and the 275 on the west, ultimately there are going to be multiple sub-neighborhoods within Ybor. You'll see single-family residential in the northeast quadrant, east of 22nd, north of 7th. You're going to see, hopefully, an arts district south of 7th, right in the core. You've got this entertainment district, food, beverage, retail, entertainment along 7th Avenue, multifamily for the most part, on the southwest quadrant connecting Ybor to the Central Business District and Channelside and Water Street. So Gasworks itself is intended to be a component of Ybor and help benefit the growth of Ybor. And in terms of Gasworks and the build out, there will be 4,000 to 5,000 residences, mostly multifamily. There will be some office component. There will be some local retail, but it'd probably be not much more than 100,000 square feet in totality at full build out, 100 plus thousand square feet, because we don't want to take away from the main retail node, which is 7th Avenue. So it'll have some local food and beverage, maybe a gym, maybe a place to get your nails done or your hair cut. But 7th Avenue is the main retail node.
The main promenade where it had always been, right?
Yes.
Jason, did you have a question?
Yeah, so I'll say this. So, I mean, obviously, listen, everybody knows places change, places evolve. That's sort of the nature of things. I would say there is a sense of Ybor that people do want Ybor to stay weird, I guess, quote unquote. And I guess the question I would ask is, how do you ensure that while, rates of rents are going to be going up, obviously, how do you ensure that places like, Crowbar, for example, Tom George has already said that he will be leaving when the lease ends, I believe, in 2026. How do we make sure that we still have local restaurants, local venues that get to remain? The institutions in so many in Ybor, we saw Boneyard, we've lost. We lost Tropicana several years ago. Some of these places that in Ybor that have helped to make that place what it is. How do we preserve that while developing it, allowing it to evolve?
It's a great question, and I think it comes with intentionality, just being thoughtful. I'm very conscious of that. We're not looking to bring chains in to the district. We want I mentioned good local restaurateurs. And so, yes, is there a place for live music? We really want to keep and maintain live music. Tom does a wonderful job. Rich McIntyre is redeveloping 1920, the old Frankie's Patio, and he's working with the GMF folks to bring live music back into Ybor. That's an important component of it. But yeah, keep Ybor weird. Keep Austin weird. Yes, I absolutely concur. It is that rich diversity of individuals, of businesses, of venues to go to that make Ybor special.
Shout out to Rich McIntyre too for his contributions as well.
Let me just real quick address this because I have this unusual catbird seed long view of Ybor City. I mean, Richard Gonsmart, Jill Wax, and about 4 people have been there longer than I have. Everybody has their Ybor City. I've come to realize this. If you were a kid that went down there in the late 90s and you were a goth kid and you went to the castle, that's your Ybor City. If you are somebody who's today in your 80s and your Italian grandparents had a restaurant in Ybor City and you went down there as a kid, that's your Ybor City. If you're a cigar smoker and you love the idea of sitting on a cafe street and smoking cigars, that's your Ybor City. And guess what? We all have an Ybor City, and none of them are the same. And the problem is people don't want to give that up. People, if I had a nickel for every time somebody said to me, well, it'll never be what it used to be. It'll never be what it once was. Well, guess what? No, it won't. Because nothing is what it once was. My knees and my joints are not what they once was.
Here.
Change is the inevitable part of living in this dimension. So here's my feeling about it. Ybor City, when you're on I-4 coming into the interchange, the sign you see says Federal Landmark Historic District. That's what Ybor City is by law. That's what the world sees it as. Entertainment district, rarely you'll see me use those words. Artistic district, when I went there, it was a bohemian mecca of weird shops. Daryl remembers that well. And it was rich, by the way. But you know what? Those guys got pushed out because of all the nightclubs and bars that came in. It made it hard. It made it hard for retail to come in. And so, you know, I can't really play a large violin for anybody who has some degree of butthurt about what is happening in Ybor City. Because in truth, Ybor City is always going to be changing. And it's always going to be something different. Again, going back to my original premise, you can only hope, in my personal opinion, that somebody comes along with the capital and the vision to make it something a little bit better. But it organically was a mixed-use district in its beginnings, and it should be a mixed-use district. If you use a chair as a ladder, you're bound to have problems. Ladders are to be ladders and chairs are to be chairs. This is kind of the way life works. And this constant desire on the part of the city to turn Ybor City into something it is not has always been a problem, really coming from the city, not coming from developers like Daryl or other people that are trying to do things in Ybor City. So that's my take, is that you can't break eggs there without somebody getting a little bit
ruffled, their feelings ruffled,
have their feathers ruffled.
So I'm gonna say it at the risk of saying it out loud. That was radio gold, my friend.
You were great.
That was radio.
I'm sorry
gold.
about your knees.
So yeah, and my back, and John's hair, whatever. We can go all around the table with this. I'm sorry. Hey, listen,
a low blow. It's a high blow.
Down and dirty. I'm not. Listen. Have you seen the top of my head lately? Yes. But my point is this: we're all hoping that Daryl is that guy, right? I mean, we're all hoping that his leadership will take us to where we all hope we can go, right? We can go. And Daryl,
Absolutely. And Mario, allow me real quick.
Please.
When Vicente Martinez Ybor came there in 1885, he was a developer. He and Ignacio Haya and Eduardo Manara, these were developers.
Manrada, but that's okay.
And the alligators that lived there didn't want to see that happen.
No.
And that's really what it boils down to is I had to go through my own personal metamorphosis to realize, all developers are not evil. Some of them are good people. And so this is what I think is happening.
Had it not been for Mr. Ybor and his intentions to develop Ybor City, we're not even having this discussion right now.
So I need to put a little water on the love fest.
Come on.
So Joe, you give history tours. A big part of the Ybor history was the fact that workers lived nearby. They lived there. They lived nearby
because they had work there.
They had their little bodegas, their little casitas, and et cetera, and they lived there.
Yes.
Most recently at Tampa Park Apartments, there were a lot of working class people. Again, I taught their children right there at Booker T. Washington, but there are a lot of children, families, working class families that lived there. 350 families were eliminated. And this is not John Dingfelder talking. This is a lot of people in the community. Back in January of 22, when Darrell first came to City Council, and I was on City Council at the time, the St. Pete Times, or the Tampa Bay Times, said, quote, "The housing complex was one of the last places close to downtown Tampa with rents low enough for low-income families, seniors, and people on disability benefits." And Darrell, I will recognize and compliment you on the fact that you and your partners, out of 4,500 units, what I read was you're building 350 units of affordable or workforce housing, and that's good. It's only 7% by my calculations at midnight last night. So a lot of people would call this gentrification. It's not my word, but I think it clearly could be described as gentrification. I know you've probably given this a lot of thought, a lot of discussion, and you have an opportunity to speak to it right now.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to. So I completely agree with you.
And by the way, I wanted to compliment you on one other thing, and I know you wouldn't say it yourself. When these people were getting tossed out of Tampa Park Apartments by the owners of the building, not by Darrell, he contributed $800,000 or about $1,500 per family to relocate those people. And I compliment you on that.
Here.
But that's a short-term solution. It's sort of a diaspora when these large complexes get closed down. That's a community in itself that gets tossed around and spread out across the county.
Yeah.
And I run into some of these people, and they had families and they had neighbors and they had this and that. And pretty soon they're spread out all over the county or multiple counties because they can't afford to live close to downtown anymore. So anyway, gentrification, what's your response? Sorry to interrupt.
So the Tampa Park Apartments had reached their useful life. They were the buildings were no longer in physical condition for people to really inhabit them. And so keeping them was not really a choice. And I purchased the property. It was for sale, and I purchased it and went through a very thoughtful process on making sure that the individuals who were there had a place to live. We had Lady Tori Boyd. She did an amazing job. She and her team were on site every day for months and months, working with each individual. We facilitated their move. We helped them with the transition. The bigger question is a really important one, and it's one that we're facing in Tampa, we're facing around the country, and that is affordability of housing. And it's a complex answer. There's no easy, quick solution. I think it's really important to have housing in a geography where, if we want to realize the dream in Ybor, people can walk to work, right? Yep. Or at least at a minimum, take transit to work. So there's certainly the transit component. Cars are incredibly expensive. I mean, you're at $8,000-$10,000 a year by the time you pay for your car, you pay for your gas, you pay for your insurance, you pay for your maintenance,
parking,
and pay for your parking. So having the right mobility options is really important, and I'm a strong believer in that. I know that effort is ongoing here in Tampa. Having affordable housing in the area is really important.
Where's it going to go? So I mean, the 7% that you're doing on this Gasworks project, clearly, you're not going to bring those families back by any stretch of the imagination, because by the time you get done, it's going to be 10 or 15 years later. You guys have mentioned a lot of open space in Ybor City. Are you and your partners looking at some of that open space specifically for, some affordable housing complexes? There's a lot of grants out there from the state, a lot of tax benefits, et cetera. Is that part of the program? We are, yes. So we've got a property on 3rd Avenue, and we haven't quite talked about more about the arts, but it's a property that we are donating to ArtSpace, which is a 501c3 out of Minneapolis.
and they are looking to build 75 affordable units, tax credit based, with preference given to artists who are, many of them are will qualify for tax credit housing at 60% of AMI. So yes, so like right there in the core of Ybor, we're looking to add housing.
I've got a question here from an email that came in, and then remind me on the backside of this that I cannot let you possibly leave the studio today without talking a little Tampa Bay Rays.
I knew the stadium.
Well,
was
I mean,
wrong.
because there are people.
I was going to bring
Wait
it
a
up
minute.
too. I was
Wait.
gonna bring it up.
Okay. Because there are people right now screaming at their radio, going, "Are you going to ask him? Are you going to ask him? We got to ask him." But first, let me read this email. It says, one of the core things that made Ybor great and unique are the mutual aid societies. Many of them struggle today to maintain their historic building and community functions. Have you made any financial commitments to help the aging and historic societies to help keep Ybor? And I want to say that because as a person whose antecedents thrived in that time, and still somebody who loves to frequent those beautiful old buildings. And we know how you feel about preservation. We know it's part of your DNA. Obviously, when you came to Ybor, you decided to stay. Answer that email, and then let's talk baseball.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yes. So have had active involvement with the Italian Club. I'm a member of the Italian Club. I participate in events and have made contributions there. I have worked on a number of fronts closely with Patrick Montega and made contributions
the Cuban Club,
there.
sure.
Yes, been to events there, and have recently had active dialogue with Centro Asturiano. I think all three clubs are facing the same challenge. They've got these amazing facilities, which were the center of people's life, right? They got their entertainment there, their food there. They got their health insurance through the clubs. So it's a wonderful question. First and foremost, you have to preserve the buildings, right? The edifices. But more importantly, what is the content? How do we breathe life back into those clubs so they are once again centers of activity? And there's not an easy answer, but it is something that proactively ask the question and brainstorm, how do we do that? How do we help return those clubs to become thriving centers of our community?
And because I think we benefit when they're thriving. Ybor City thrives. I mean, at least that's been the history that has shown us. And with just
so I for one going to the Rays Stadium, I for one thought it was a really neat idea to try and put the stadium down on the south end, not right on 7th Avenue, and everybody was freaking out, but down on the south end toward 2nd or 3rd, down toward Highway 60. And I thought it would inject a lot of life into the district in a variety of ways. That was just my personal opinion. I was ready to support it on council, but then it all sort of vaporized. So where is it now, and what was your role in it, and what's your future role in it?
Well, I would like to see baseball in Tampa. Let me rephrase that.
Do you like baseball, Daryl? Let's start there.
I do like baseball.
He was born in South Africa, so I don't know. He probably likes rugby.
Cricket, my man, cricket.
So first and foremost, it's imperative that baseball stays in the Tampa Bay area.
Thank you.
Right. I think that is.
We can all agree.
Yes, it needs to stay in Tampa Bay. Whether baseball ends up in St. Pete or ends up in Tampa, I think the Tampa Bay area is okay. Personally, would I love to see baseball in Tampa, in the urban core? Yes, I would. And I've worked hard to work with the Rays, work with the city and the county to try to facilitate a way to achieve that. If they don't end up in Tampa, it is okay. The urban core is growing and thriving. Ybor City will grow and thrive independent of that. So it's not essential that baseball comes, but would I love to see it? Yes. The population is here. They'll get more people to the games. I think everybody acknowledges that. And so, yes.
And I think a lot of us feel like, we've been doing the St. Pete thing for a hot minute. So, could we try the Tampa thing for a hot minute? And I have a personal plea to my new best friend, Daryl Shaw. If the opportunity avails itself, please sit with me on the Tampa Native Show so we can further this conversation a little more. But even more importantly, I've traveled a little bit in my previous profession. I traveled a little bit. And when I was in London, I was hard by the TV watching a cricket match, and and no matter how hard I tried to learn the sport, it was very difficult. I get it. I know I got it. I sticky wicket. I understand everything. But here's my point. My point is I would love to sit with you over a café con leche and have you really give me the insider's look at that fabulous game, which, oh, by the way, we have a community here that goes to the parks on Sundays and plays cricket. If you've ever seen them, it's fascinating to watch them play. But Daryl, the invitation is open whenever you would like to come by and speak with us.
Jason.
So I have one last. So obviously, listen, there's a lot of challenges that are facing Ybor, but I wanted to ask you. So what is the single greatest challenge that you're experiencing over the course of trying to tie all these knots together, make all these things happen, put a bow on it? Obviously, whether it be permitting or city issues or political issues or financial issues, what are you finding the single greatest challenge to you achieving your vision?
City bureaucracy, is that?
Yeah, I'm sure that's on the list.
Time. You want things to move quickly, and they never move quickly enough, right? This is an evolution. And so if you look at Ybor today and you compare it to where it was several years ago, yes, there is definitely change. It will take time to change. I think we're 4 to 5 years out from seeing a fairly material transformation. Somebody leaves and comes back in 4 or 5 years, and I think it's going to take a decade or two, 2 decades, before you're really kind of beginning to fully realize the vision.
So you're planting an orchard and not a garden. These are trees and not perennials.
And that's not a stretch of the imagination, because if we think about it, the time, which, I try to explain this to people all the time. The sun is traversing the sky at the same rate of speed all day long, but because it's traversing such an expanse, we have nothing to judge it against until you get to the beach and you see that sun drop out of the sky on the horizon. Then you realize, man, that went fast. Well, it is going fast, and it's going.
Except it's 5 degrees hotter.
It's going faster and faster. We can't let you get out of here, Daryl. I feel compelled to ask also: is there anything that we haven't asked you, or even more importantly, is there anything that you would like to say to a vast listening community that they may not know about you?
How do you want to be remembered?
Yeah, or just how do they want to know you now? What do they know? What should we know about you besides you had a life committed to caring for animals? You're a soft-spoken gentleman, and we love you, and we love your energy and your effort. What else could we?
Thank you, Mario.
Of course.
It's not about me. It's about the community and how can we work together to Ybor is iconic. It's iconic for not only Ybor, for Tampa Bay. You ask anybody about Tampa, they mention Ybor City. How do we together create a diverse, growing, thriving community?
Beautiful.
That's
the show.
About the best way to end the show I can. Joe, get the mic one more time so we can ask you as well. Is there anything you'd like to leave us with? We've got just one thing to go.
Just one thing I'd like to say is that I view Ybor City as a resource. It's our historical resource. And earlier, John was talking about the bay, nitrogen's in Tampa Bay and pollution. That's a natural resource. Ybor City is a historic resource. And so just as we have to take care of the Hillsborough River, we need to take care of Ybor City. And the way I see Daryl is that he's a guy who's trying to build things on the river without polluting the river. And that's kind of where we are.
I get that sense of Daryl as well, and I think everybody who's been listening today comes away with that impression also. We are in support of all things Daryl Shaw. So you've got a friend here at WMNF anytime you want to come on here and speak to us, Daryl. Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Let me just say, with a little frog in my throat, on behalf of my broadcast partner, John Dingfelder, sitting right here practicing his sailor's knots. You can't see him, but he's doing a great job of it. Our engineer, Jason Marlowe. Hello. Our phone screener today, thank you so much for being there with us. We like to say, I'm Mario Nunez, wishing you salud and happy days. We'll be on the lookout for you next week. Stay tuned now for The Skinny with Ray Roa, Ben Montgomery, and Mitch Perry. Have a nice weekend, everybody.
And
be kind.
If you don't start calling us, we're going to call you.
Be kind to each other. We love you all.
Salud.
Have a good weekend.